Everyone refused to bond with the blind and disabled alien princess, except this human. The crystalline halls of the Celestial Palace on Lumeria Prime gleamed with an otherworldly radiance as Daniel Stonal, decorated veteran of Earth's Special Forces, strode purposefully through its corridors. His military-grade power armor hummed softly, warm indicator lights pulsing in rhythm with his movements. The successful completion of his latest mission for the Lumerian royal family had earned him an unexpected audience with King Thalion himself. The throne room doors parted silently, revealing the majestic chamber beyond. King Thalion sat regally upon his ornate throne, his lean athletic frame draped in a dark gray tunic embroidered with intricate golden patterns. His pale silver skin seemed to glow from within, while his sharp violet eyes held both authority and wisdom. Beside him sat Princess Ariana, a vision of ethereal beauty despite her condition. The princess's flowing white hair cascaded like moonbeams around her delicate features. Though blind, her large violet eyes held an enigmatic power that seemed to pierce straight through to Daniel's soul. Her luxurious white corseted gown, adorned with golden embroidery and precious gems, complemented her pale silver skin perfectly. The specially designed throne she sat upon served both as symbol of her status and necessary mobility aid, as she was paralyzed from the waist down. "Approach Daniel Stonal of Earth," King Thalion's voice resonated through the chamber. "Your service to our kingdom has been exemplary." Daniel moved forward, his armor's footfalls echoing softly. "You honor me, your majesty." "The honor is well earned," the king replied, then paused thoughtfully. "However, I have summoned you here today for a matter of delicate nature." Princess Ariana turned her head slightly toward her father's voice, an almost imperceptible smile playing at her lips. "As you can see," the king continued, "my daughter faces certain challenges, yet her spirit remains unbroken, her mind sharp as a Lumerian crystal blade." He gestured toward Ariana. "Many have sought her hand, drawn by her title, our wealth, our influence. None have looked past her disabilities to see the remarkable woman she truly is." Daniel's gaze was drawn to the princess, who sat with perfect posture despite her limitations. There was something compelling about her presence, a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from within. "Your Majesty," Daniel began carefully, "I'm not sure I understand." "My father," Princess Ariana interrupted, her voice carrying notes of both silk and steel, "believes that because you've proven yourself honorable in service to our kingdom, you might be worthy of getting to know me as a person, rather than a political opportunity." Her blind eyes seemed to find him unerringly. "Though I must warn you, I'm not exactly known for being agreeable." Daniel couldn't help but smile at her directness. "Your Highness, I've never much cared for agreeable people. They tend to be hiding something." A genuine laugh escaped the princess's lips, causing her father to raise an eyebrow in surprise. "Well then, Daniel Stonal of Earth, perhaps we should have a conversation." The king nodded approvingly. "I have another task that requires attention in the southern provinces. Should you accept it, you would be working closely with my daughter, who oversees that region's diplomatic relations." "And if I decline?" Daniel asked, more out of curiosity than actual consideration. "Then you decline," Princess Ariana answered before her father could speak. "Though I warn you, you'd be missing out on quite an adventure." There was a challenging edge to her voice that sparked something in Daniel's chest. "I've never been one to turn down an adventure, Your Highness," he replied, earning another small smile from the princess. The southern province of Lumeria Prime stretched before Daniel like a canvas, painted with crystalline spires and iridescent flora. From the royal shuttle's viewport, he watched the alien landscape pass below while Princess Ariana briefed him on their diplomatic mission. "The Drachnid Empire's ambassador arrives tomorrow," she explained, her fingers dancing over a holographic interface adapted for her use. "They're our strongest rivals in the sector, and they've been particularly interested in strengthening ties with our kingdom lately." Daniel noted the slight tension in her voice. "Interested in strengthening ties, or interested in you specifically?" A knowing smile graced her features. "Ambassador Krell has made his intentions quite clear. He's the seventh son of their emperor, and apparently my conditions make me an ideal match in their culture. Drachnids value mental capabilities over physical ones." "And what do you value, Your Highness?" Daniel asked, studying her profile. Ariana turned toward his voice, her blind eyes somehow managing to convey amusement. Please, call me Ariana when we're alone. And I value authenticity, Daniel. Something remarkably rare in court politics. The shuttle landed at the provincial palace, a smaller but no less magnificent version of the capital's royal residence. As they disembarked, Daniel noticed how Ariana's hover throne gracefully navigated the terrain, responding to her subtle commands. The technology is impressive, he commented. Lumerian crystal tech, she explained. It responds to neural patterns. I can feel it like an extension of myself. She demonstrated by executing a perfect spin, her white gown flowing around her. Though I must admit, it's more fun when I have an audience worth impressing. Daniel felt his pulse quicken at her playful tone. Are you flirting with me, your high Ariana? Would that be inappropriate? She countered, raising an elegant eyebrow. By human standards, perhaps. I'm more interested in your standard, he replied, matching her boldness. Their banter was interrupted by the arrival of Lord Valen, the province's chief administrator. His silver skin was darker than most Lumerians, and his violet eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Daniel. Your Highness, he bowed deeply, I see the rumors of your human companion are true. Daniel is here as both my personal guard and diplomatic advisor, Ariana stated firmly. I trust this won't be an issue, Lord Valen. Of course not, Your Highness, though some might question the wisdom of having a human present during such delicate negotiations with the Dreadnoughts. Daniel maintained his professional demeanor, but he could feel Ariana's irritation radiating from her. I assure you, Lord Valen, my presence will only benefit these negotiations. Indeed, Ariana added with a sharp edge to her voice, Daniel has proven himself more than capable in matters of both combat and diplomacy. Now, shall we discuss tomorrow's arrangements? As they followed Lord Valen into the palace, Daniel noticed several courtiers watching them, whispering behind ornate fans and crystalline screens. The political undercurrents were palpable, and he realized this mission would test more than just his diplomatic skills. So that evening, after numerous meetings and preparations, Daniel escorted Ariana to her private chambers. The princess had been uncharacteristically quiet for the past hour. Something's troubling, he observed as they stopped at her door. You're perceptive, she smiled softly. And I'm concerned about tomorrow, the Drachnids. They're not known for accepting rejection gracefully. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. Are you planning to reject Ambassador Krell's proposal? I'm planning to reject any proposal that treats me like a political commodity, she replied, her voice carrying both determination and vulnerability. My father may have arranged this mission, but he also gave me the freedom to choose my own path. Their proximity felt charged with unspoken possibilities. Daniel could smell the subtle fragrance of her hair, reminiscent of starlight and crystal flowers. And what path are you considering, Ariana? She reached out, her hand finding his chest with unerring accuracy. Through his formal attire, he could feel the warmth of her touch. One that terrifies the court, intrigues my father, and makes my heart race whenever you're near. Daniel gently covered her hand with his own. I'm not exactly what your people would consider suitable. My people once thought a blind, paralyzed princess was unsuitable to serve as a diplomatic representative, she countered. Yet here I am, proving them wrong. Perhaps it's time to challenge more of their preconceptions. The air between them crackled with tension and possibility. Daniel found himself drawn closer, captivated by her strength and vulnerability. Her wit and beauty. This could complicate tomorrow's negotiations. Tomorrow is already complicated, she smiled, her free hand finding his face, fingers tracing his features with gentle curiosity. But right now, in this moment, everything feels remarkably clear. Their first kiss was gentle, exploratory, a meeting of worlds and cultures and hearts. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Oriana's smile held a mixture of joy and mischief. Well, she whispered, I believe that just scandalized at least 3 eavesdropping courtiers. Daniel couldn't help but laugh. Only 3? I must be losing my touch. Oh, I don't think so, she replied, her finger still tracing patterns on his chest. But perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. I believe we have much to discuss about human-Lumerian relations. The morning of Ambassador Krell's arrival dawned with an air of anticipation and tension. Daniel stood beside Ariana in the provincial palace's grand reception hall, his formal attire replaced by his power armor, a diplomatic necessity when dealing with the militaristic drachnids. "Your armor's energy signature is quite distracting," Ariana murmured, her lips curving into a subtle smile. The neural interface of her hover throne allowed her to sense the technological aura around her, including Daniel's suit. "Is that your way of saying, 'I clean up nice'?" he teased, watching as her fingers absently traced patterns on her throne's crystalline armrest. That's my way of saying you're making it very difficult to maintain my diplomatic composure," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of desire that made his pulse quicken. Their intimate moment was interrupted by Lord Valen's announcement. "The Drachnid delegation approaches." The ambassador's entrance was calculated to intimidate. Krell towered over the assembled courtiers, his scaled armor gleaming with an oily iridescence. 6 elite guards flanked him, their biomechanical implants humming ominously. "Princess Ariana," Krell's voice resonated through the chamber. "Your beauty surpasses even the tales that reach the Empire." His reptilian eyes flickered dismissively over Daniel before returning to the princess. "Though I question the wisdom of having a human present for such delicate negotiations." "Daniel Stenell is here at my personal request, Ambassador," Ariana replied smoothly. "His presence is non-negotiable." An undercurrent of whispers rippled through the court. Daniel maintained his professional demeanor, but he couldn't help noticing how several courtiers seemed more interested in Krell's reaction than the actual proceedings. The morning's negotiations proved tense but productive, with Ariana skillfully steering conversations away from personal matters and toward trade agreements. However, during the midday recess, Lord Valen approached Daniel with an unexpected challenge. "The ambassador has invoked the right of suitor's trial," Valen announced, his tone carrying both concern and something that might have been satisfaction. "As a potential suitor for the princess's hand, you must participate in the traditional challenges." Daniel glanced at Ariana, whose expression had grown serious. "What exactly does this trial entail?" 3 tests, she explained, her voice tight with worry. "Combat, wisdom, and devotion. They're ancient traditions, rarely invoked anymore." Ambassador Krell must have been planning this. "The first trial begins at sunset," Valen added, "in the Crystal Arena." As the courtiers dispersed, Danielle and Ariana retreated to her private gardens. The crystalline flowers seemed to sing softly in the afternoon breeze, creating an intimate atmosphere. "You don't have to do this," Ariana said softly, her hover throne bringing her close to where Daniel stood. "The trials were designed for Lumerian nobles. They can be extreme." Daniel gently took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Do you want me to withdraw?" "No," she whispered, her free hand finding his face. "But I don't want to lose you either. Last night was everything I've ever dreamed of. Everything I'd never thought I'd have." Their proximity ignited the same passionate tension from the previous evening. Daniel leaned down, capturing her lips in a kiss that spoke of deeper emotions than either had yet voiced. "Anina," Ariana responded with equal fervor, her fingers threading through his hair. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Ariana's blind eyes seemed to shine with an inner light. "The court would say this is highly improper," she murmured, her fingers tracing his jaw. "A princess and a human warrior, sharing such intimate moments before the trials." "And what do you say?" Daniel asked, his voice husky with desire. "I say propriety is overrated," she smiled, pulling him down for another kiss. "And that humans are remarkably good at challenging our preconceptions about what's possible." Their passionate embrace was interrupted by a subtle chime, a warning that the court would soon reconvene. As they reluctantly separated, Daniel noticed movement in the garden's shadows. A young Lumerian noble quickly ducked out of sight. "We had an audience," he noted. "Good," Ariana replied with surprising satisfaction. "Let them see. Let them understand that I choose you. Trials or no trials." Her expression grew serious. "But Daniel, there's something you should know about these challenges. They're not just tests of worthiness. They're designed to reveal the true nature of a suitor's intentions." "And what do you think they'll reveal about mine?" Her smile returned, radiant and sure. "They'll reveal what I already know. That you're the first person to see me, not my title or my conditions, but me. And that's worth fighting for." The crystal arena blazed with artificial twilight as Daniel entered for the first trial. His power armor's indicators pulsed steadily, matching his heartbeat. Above, in the royal observation pod, Ariana sat with perfect poise. though her fingers gripped her throne's armrest tightly. "The trial of combat," Lord Valen announced, his voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. "Each suitor must demonstrate their worthiness through battle prowess." Ambassador Krell stepped forward, his scaled armor catching the light. "As the challenger, I choose the nature of combat, the ancient art of crystal dancing." Daniel noticed several courtiers exchange meaningful glances. A young noble, Lord Theron, quickly approached him. "They're trying to sabotage you," Theron whispered urgently. "Crystal dancing requires intimate knowledge of Lumarian energy fields. No human has ever—" "Begin," Valen commanded. The arena floor erupted with crystalline formations, creating a deadly beautiful landscape of sharp edges and shifting platforms. Krell moved with practiced grace, each step sending ripples of energy through the crystal matrix. Daniel's armor sensors screamed warnings as the crystal formations began to resonate at frequencies designed to disrupt his systems. This wasn't just a test, it was an elaborate trap. "Your human technology cannot comprehend our ancient arts," Krell taunted, commanding crystal spears to materialize and launch toward Daniel. But Daniel had learned something vital from his nights with Ariana, something about the true nature of Lumarian crystal tech. It wasn't about control, it was about harmony. He thought of how Ariana's hover throne responded to her neural patterns, how she described feeling the technology as an extension of herself. Instead of fighting the crystal resonance, he adjusted his armor's frequency to match it. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The crystal formations began responding to his movements, creating platforms where he stepped, barriers where he needed protection. The audience gasped as he executed a perfect series of maneuvers that looked more like a dance than combat. "Impossible!" Krell snarled, launching more aggressive attacks. But Daniel had found his rhythm. Each crystal attack was met with an elegant counter, his movements flowing like water through the deadly garden of crystalline weapons. He could feel Ariana's presence above, her energy signature distinct and encouraging. The battle reached its climax when Krell, frustrated by Daniel's unexpected mastery, attempted a forbidden technique. The crystal matrix began to destabilize, threatening to collapse the entire arena. "Stop!" Lord Valen commanded, but Krell pressed on, his eyes wild with rage. Daniel saw his opportunity. Using the destabilized energy, he created a crystal formation that mirrored Krell's own attack, turning it back on the ambassador. The Drachnid found himself trapped in a cage of his own making. "The trial is concluded," Valen announced. "Daniel Stonnell has demonstrated mastery of crystal dancing and revealed attempted sabotage by his opponent." As the arena cleared, Daniel noticed more nobles approaching Lord Theron, speaking in hushed but excited tones. Support was growing among the younger generation of the court. Later that evening, in Ariana's private chambers, she practically flew from her hover throne into his arms. "That was incredible. How did you learn to manipulate the crystals so quickly?" Daniel held her close, breathing in her unique scent. "I had an excellent teacher. Everything you told me about feeling the technology, about harmony instead of control. It all made sense in that moment." "You continue to amaze me," she whispered, her fingers tracing the contours of his face. "Though I must admit, watching you move like that was rather stimulating." Her touch ignited familiar flames of desire. "Is that so, Your Highness?" She smiled against his lips. "You have no idea how much self-control it took not to demand your immediate presence after that display." Their passionate embrace deepened, but before they could lose themselves completely, an urgent knock interrupted them. Lord Theron's voice came through the door. "Your Highness, we've discovered something about the ambassador's true intentions." Reluctantly separating, they maintained contact as Ariana called for Theron to enter. The young noble rushed in, clutching a crystal datasphere. "The Drachnids aren't just seeking a political alliance," he explained breathlessly. "They're after the secret of human Lumarian compatibility. Their spies have reported your growing intimacy, and they believe it holds the key to advancing their biomechanical evolution." Daniel felt Ariana tense beside him. "That's why Krell tried to sabotage the trial," she realized. "They don't want to prevent our union. They want to study it." "There's more," Theron continued. "Several members of the court are secretly working with the Drachnids. They've been promised advanced biotech in exchange for access to any offspring that might result from your union." The implications hung heavy in the air. Daniel pulled Ariana closer protectively, while she lifted her chin with royal defiance. "Let them scheme," she declared. "They've underestimated both human determination and Lumerian loyalty. Theron, gather those you trust. It's time to show the court exactly what happens when they try to manipulate true love for political gain." Dawn broke over the provincial palace with news that King Thalion himself would arrive for the second trial. The announcement sent waves of anxiety through the court, but for Daniel and Ariana, the morning held different tensions. In her private chambers, they sat together on a crystalline balcony, their intimacy from the previous night still lingering in tender touches and knowing glances. Ariana's hover throne hummed softly as she leaned toward Daniel, her white hair catching the early light. "Father's arrival changes everything," she mused, her fingers intertwined with his. "He'll sense the change in me immediately." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Regrets?" "None," she smiled, her blind eyes bright with joy. "Our union may have shocked traditional sensibilities, but it felt more right than anything in my life. Though I must admit, I never expected human passion to be so transformative." "Transformative?" "Lumerian physiology responds to deep emotional connections," she explained, a slight blush coloring her silver skin. "Our night together, I can feel my body changing, adapting. It's as if your essence awakened something dormant within me." Before Daniel could respond, Lord Theron burst in, his usual decorum forgotten in urgency. "Your Highness, the Drachnid ambassador is demanding an immediate audience with the king upon his arrival." "Of course he is," Ariana sighed. "He must suspect—" "There's more," Theron interrupted. "The royal physicians are being summoned. They're claiming it's routine, but my sources say they're specialists in xenogenetic adaptation." Daniel stood, his protective instincts flaring. "They want to examine Ariana." "They won't touch me without my consent," Ariana declared firmly. "And after last night, I think we've proven that human Lumerian compatibility doesn't require their interference." The arrival of King Thalion transformed the provincial palace's atmosphere. His personal guard, clad in crystalline armor that made Daniel's power suit look primitive, secured the premises while court physicians hovered anxiously nearby. The throne room crackled with tension as Thalion surveyed the assembled courtiers. His violet eyes lingered on Daniel before settling on his daughter. "The trial of wisdom begins," he announced, his voice carrying authority that made even Ambassador Krell straighten. "But first we must address certain developments." Ariana moved her hover throne forward, her posture regal despite the scrutiny. "Father, if you're referring to my choice of consort, I'm referring to the fact that your neural patterns have altered significantly," Thalion interrupted, though his tone held more curiosity than anger. "The royal physicians report unprecedented changes in your crystal tech interface." Krell stepped forward, his scaled armor gleaming. "Your Majesty, this confirms our theories about human genetic potential. The Drachnid Empire would be honored to study—" "You will study nothing," Thalion cut him off sharply. "My daughter is not a laboratory specimen." "But Your Majesty," Lord Valen interjected, revealing his allegiance, "the potential benefits to both our species are irrelevant compared to my daughter's happiness," Thalion declared. His next words shocked the court. "Which, I note, has reached levels I haven't sensed since before her accident." The revelation hung in the air. Daniel felt Ariana's hands seek his, their fingers intertwining publicly for the first time. "The trial of wisdom traditionally tests a suitor's judgment," Thalion continued. "Daniel Stonal, you've already demonstrated wisdom beyond expectation. While others saw my daughter's conditions as limitations, you saw her strength. While they sought political advantage, you offered genuine love." "Your Majesty," Daniel stepped forward, still holding Ariana's hand, "I don't claim any special wisdom. I simply saw Ariana for who she is, the most remarkable person I've ever met. And therein lies true wisdom," Thalion smiled. "However, protocol demands a formal trial. Ambassador Krell, are you prepared to demonstrate your wisdom?" The Drachnid's eyes narrowed. "I choose the challenge of futures, or let us see how a human's limited perspective matches against our empire's vast knowledge." The challenge involved projecting possible futures using Lumerian crystal tech, requiring participants to navigate complex probability matrices. As the crystal matrices activated, Daniel felt Ariana's energy signature strengthen through their joined hands. "Remember what I taught you about harmony?" she whispered. The challenge began, with Krell immediately projecting futures of technological supremacy through forced evolution. Daniel, drawing on his connection with Ariana, showed something different. Futures where diversity bred strength, where differences created harmony instead of discord. The crystal matrices resonated with his projections, creating stunning displays of possible futures where humans and Lumerians evolved together naturally, their strengths complementing each other's weaknesses. "Enough!" Krell suddenly shouted, his composure cracking. "This is manipulation. The human has corrupted the princess's crystal interface." "No," Thalion corrected, his eyes bright with understanding. "He has enhanced it. The changes in Ariana's neural patterns, they're not just adaptation, they're evolution, natural, unforced, born of genuine connection." The night before the final trial, Daniel and Ariana found themselves in the palace's ancient crystal gardens. The bioluminescent flora casted ethereal patterns across Ariana's silver skin as she rested in Daniel's arms, her hover throne temporarily abandoned for the comfort of a crystalline bench. "The physicians confirmed it," she whispered, her hand resting protectively over her abdomen. "Our union has created something unprecedented, a perfect fusion of human and Lumerian genetics." Daniel covered her hand with his own, marveling at the subtle warmth emanating from her usually cool skin. "Are you afraid?" "Not of this," she smiled, turning her face toward his. "This feels right, natural. I'm afraid of what the Draconids might do when they discover the truth. Their entire empire is built on controlled evolution through artificial means. Our child represents everything they've failed to achieve." A soft chime from her discarded hover throne interrupted them. An urgent message from Lord Theron. Daniel helped Ariana back into her seat before activating the communication crystal. "Your Highness," Theron's voice was tense, "Ambassador Krell has requested to modify the final trial of devotion. He's invoking an ancient clause that allows for physical challenges." "He knows," Ariana breathed. "Somehow he knows about the pregnancy." "There's more," Theron continued. "The trial modifications he's requesting, they're designed to expose both participants to raw crystal energy. For a Lumerian or Dracnid, it would be uncomfortable but manageable. For a human, it could be fatal," Daniel finished, understanding dawning. "And if I refuse? Then by ancient law, you forfeit not only the trials, but any claim to the princess or..." Theron hesitated. "No, any offspring." Ariana's hand gripped Daniel's arm. "We won't let them." "Your Highness," a new voice interrupted. One of Ariana's handmaidens burst into the garden. "Something's happening to your neural interface." The hover throne was indeed behaving strangely, its crystalline components pulsing with an inner light that matched the subtle glow now emanating from Ariana's skin. As they watched, the throne's structure began to reshape itself, responding to some unspoken command. "It's not just the interface," Ariana said wonderingly. "It's me, the pregnancy. It's accelerating my connection to the crystal tech. I can feel everything, Daniel. The entire palace network, every crystal matrix." King Thalion arrived moments later, drawn by the unprecedented energy signatures. His eyes widened at the sight of his daughter. "The ancient texts spoke of this," he breathed. "When true love bridges worlds, barriers fall. Ariana, your condition, your paralysis, it was never a limitation. It was preparation." "Preparation for what?" Daniel asked, still holding Ariana protectively. "For evolution." The king's voice held wonder. "Human passion and determination combined with Lumerian crystal tech sensitivity. The child you carry isn't just a fusion of our species, it's a catalyst for change." A commotion from the palace interrupted them. Lord Theron rushed in, his face pale. "The Dracnids, they're attempting to access the central crystal matrix. If they succeed, they could corrupt the entire network," Ariana finished, her expression hardening, "including my neural interface." "And harm the baby," Daniel added grimly, his power armor activating in response to his rising anger. "Not if I access it first." Ariana's voice held new strength. "Father, I need your help. The pregnancy has enhanced my abilities, but I need your experience to navigate the ancient systems." Thalion nodded, understanding. "Daniel, protect her. What we're about to attempt will leave us vulnerable." "I know, always," Daniel promised, positioning himself between his love and the garden entrance. The air crackled with energy as father and daughter joined hands, their combined consciousness reaching into the crystal network. Ariana's hover throne became the focal point, its structure continuing to evolve as it channeled their power. The final trial begins now, Thalion announced formally. Not in combat or physical challenge, but in protection of what matters most: family, love, and the future. Through their connected consciousness, Ariana sensed the Draconids' attempts to corrupt the system, but where they sought to force their way in, she flowed naturally through the crystal matrices, her enhanced connection guided by her father's wisdom and strengthened by her love for Daniel. "They're trying to isolate my neural interface," she reported, her voice distant yet strong. "They think if they can disrupt it, they can harm the baby," Daniel growled, his armor's sensors detecting multiple threats approaching the garden. "Nah, let them try," Ariana smiled, her blind eyes now glowing with crystal energy. "They don't understand what they're dealing with. This isn't about technology or evolution. This is about love." The crystal garden erupted into chaos as Draconid forces breached the outer defenses. Daniel's power armor registered multiple hostile signatures approaching, while Ariana and King Thalion remained deep in their crystal tech communion. "The baby!" Ariana suddenly gasped, her hover throne pulsing with intense light. "Something's happening. The crystal energy is accelerating everything." Daniel watched in amazement as the subtle glow beneath her skin intensified. The pregnancy that should have taken months was progressing at an unprecedented rate, their child's unique genetic makeup catalyzing extraordinary changes. "Your armor," Thalion commanded, his eyes still closed in concentration. "Remove it." "Your Majesty, trust me, what's about to happen requires direct contact." As Daniel disengaged his power suit, Ambassador Krell burst into the garden, flanked by his elite guard. "Stop them! The human-Lumerian hybrid must not be allowed to exist." "Too late," Ariana smiled, reaching for Daniel with one hand while maintaining her connection to the crystal network with the other. The moment their skin touched, an energy surged through them both. Daniel felt it, a resonance he'd never experienced before, as if his very DNA was singing in harmony with the crystal matrices. Through their connection, he sensed everything Ariana did. The vast network of crystal tech, the pulse of their rapidly developing child, the desperate attempts of the Draconids to corrupt the system. "Impossible," Krell snarled. "No human should be able to interface with our technology." "Your mistake," Daniel replied, his voice overlapping with Ariana's in perfect synchronization, "was assuming technology could replace love." The garden's crystals responded to their unified presence, creating a protective barrier around them. Lord Theron and his loyal guards engaged the Draconid forces, buying them precious time. "The pregnancy is reaching a critical phase," Thalion warned. "The child's energy signature is overwhelming the neural interface." Ariana squeezed Daniel's hand. "Then let's give it somewhere else to go." Together, they directed the surplus energy into the palace's crystal network. Instead of fighting the accelerated development, they embraced it, letting their love guide the transformation. The effect was spectacular. Throughout the palace, corrupt crystal matrices purified themselves. The Draconid attempts at technological sabotage backfired as the network responded to the pure intention of its users, rather than forced commands. "My love," Ariana whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Do you remember our first night together? How perfectly we fit, despite our differences." "How could I forget?" Daniel smiled, supporting her as another wave of energy pulsed through them. "You said humans had a particular talent for making the impossible possible. Now, look what we've created together," she laughed, joyous despite the chaos around them. "A child of two worlds, born of love rather than laboratory manipulation. The very thing the Draconids couldn't achieve with all their advanced technology." Krell, watching his forces fall back under the combined assault of crystal tech and loyal guards, made one final, desperate attempt. He activated a forbidden device designed to shatter neural interfaces. "If I cannot have the secret of your compatibility," he roared, "then none shall have it." The device powered up, its cruel energy targeting Ariana's hover throne. But instead of destroying her neural interface, something extraordinary happened. The throne, responding to the unprecedented connection between human and Lumerian biology, transformed. Its crystalline structure flowed like liquid light, integrating with Ariana's nervous system in ways the original designers never imagined possible. "I can feel my legs," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Daniel, I can feel everything." Their unborn child's energy signature had somehow bridged the gap in her neural pathways, using the crystal tech as a conductor. The disability that had defined her life was being rewritten by the very thing the Draconids had sought to prevent. Natural evolution through love. No. Krell's device overloaded, the feedback from the pure crystal energy destroying his biomechanical implants. The proud ambassador fell to his knees, his carefully engineered superiority stripped away. King Thalion opened his eyes, wonder written across his face. The trial of devotion is complete, though not in any way our ancestors could have imagined. In the days following the Drachnid confrontation, the provincial palace transformed from a battleground into a sanctuary of new beginnings. Ariana's accelerated pregnancy progressed with remarkable stability, her restored mobility allowing her to explore the crystal gardens with newfound joy. Daniel watched in wonder as she practiced walking, her movements growing more confident each day. "He's restless today?" Ariana smiled, placing Daniel's hand on her now prominent belly. Through their enhanced connection to the crystal tech, they could both sense their son's unique energy signature, a perfect blend of human determination and Lemurian grace. Like his mother, Daniel teased, pulling her close, always pushing boundaries. Says the man who challenged an entire empire for love. She turned in his arms, her once blind eyes now shimmering with an inner light that matched the crystal matrices surrounding them. The pregnancy had awakened abilities in both of them that defied conventional understanding. Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by Lord Theron's arrival. "Your Highness, the medical team reports everything is proceeding perfectly. However, there's growing interest from both human and Lumeriani scientists about the child's unprecedented development. They'll have to remain interested from a distance," Daniel stated firmly, his protective instincts flaring. "Our son won't be anyone's research subject." "Of course not," King Thalion's voice carried from the garden entrance. "But his existence will change everything we thought we knew about interspecies compatibility." The king approached, carrying an ancient crystal codex. "I've been researching our oldest records. There are references to a time when humans and Lumerians worked together more closely before the Great Separation. They speak of children born of both worlds, blessed with unique gifts. Like the ability to interface directly with crystal tech?" Ariana asked, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen. "Among others," Thalion nodded. "The records suggest these children possessed extraordinary abilities to bridge different forms of technology and biology. They were called the Starborn." "That's it," Ariana breathed, her face lighting up. "Lyrian. That's what we'll name him." "Star-touched," Daniel translated, remembering his lessons in ancient Lumerian. "Perfect." Their discussion was interrupted by a sudden pulse of energy from the crystal network. Ariana gasped, steadying herself against Daniel. "He's responding to the name," she laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Oh, come here, both of you. Feel this." Daniel and Thalion placed their hands on her belly, experiencing through the crystal tech interface the pure joy emanating from the unborn child. Little Lyrian's energy signature danced through the network, causing the garden's crystals to chime in harmony. "Remarkable," Thalion whispered. "He's already showing more control over the crystal matrices than most adult Lumerians." "But how will we guide him?" Daniel wondered aloud. "There's no precedent for raising a child with these abilities." "The same way you've handled everything else," Theron offered with a smile. "With love, patience, and that peculiarly human talent for making the impossible possible." That evening, in their private chambers, Daniel held Ariana as she rested, her new neural pathways sometimes overwhelming her with sensation. Their physical intimacy had evolved into something beyond conventional understanding. Each touch carried echoes of crystal energy. Each kiss resonated through their shared connection to the network. "I never imagined this," Ariana murmured, tracing patterns on Daniel's chest. "When Father first suggested finding someone who could see past my disabilities, I thought he was being naively optimistic. And now I understand that what others saw as limitations were actually preparing me for something extraordinary. My blindness taught me to see through the crystal tech. My paralysis led to the neural interface that now allows us this incredible connection." She raised herself up to kiss him deeply. "And you, my beloved human, taught me that love doesn't recognize boundaries or limitations." Through their bond, Daniel felt Lyrian respond to their emotions, his developing consciousness already attuned to the love between his parents. The crystal mattress throughout their chambers hummed in response, creating a cocoon of soft light around the family. "He's going to change everything," Daniel observed, marveling at how their son's energy signature was already influencing the technology around them. "He already has," Ariana smiled. "But then again, So did you, the moment you looked at a blind, paralyzed princess and saw only possibilities. The birth of Prince Lyrian marked a new era for both human and Lemurian civilizations. The crystal spires of the provincial palace sang with joy as the first starborn child in millennia entered the world, his unique energy signature causing every crystal matrix within range to pulse with golden light. Daniel held his son in wonder, marveling at how perfectly the child embodied both worlds. Lyrian's silver skin held a warm, human undertone, while his violet eyes sparkled with the same determination that had first drawn Daniel to Ariana. Wisps of platinum blonde hair crowned his head, shimmering with an inner light that matched the crystal tech surrounding them. "He's perfect," Ariana whispered, reaching out to touch their son's cheek. Her restored sight allowed her to drink in every detail of their child's face. And quite proud of himself, if the crystal network's reaction is any indication. Indeed, young Lyrian seemed to delight in making the nearby crystals dance with light, his infant giggles triggering cascades of harmonic resonance throughout the palace. King Thalion approached the new family, his royal composure softening at the sight of his grandson. "The Council of Elders has reviewed the ancient prophecies," he announced. "They believe Lyrian's birth heralds what our ancestors called the convergence, a time when the barriers between species fall away, replaced by understanding and unity. All because one human refused to see limitations where others saw only disability." Ariana smiled, drawing Daniel down for a tender kiss. The news of Lyrian's birth spread rapidly across the galaxy. Where the Drachnids had sought to force evolution through artificial means, this natural union of human and Lemurian had achieved something far more profound. Other species began approaching the Lemurian court, not with political schemes, but with genuine interest in understanding how love could bridge seemingly insurmountable differences. As Lyrian grew, his abilities flourished beyond anyone's expectations. By his first month, he could manipulate crystal tech with the skill of a master artisan. His presence strengthened the neural interfaces of everyone around him and enabling even non-Lemurians to experience limited connection to the crystal network. "Watch this," Oriana laughed one evening, as their son created elaborate patterns of light in the air above his crib. Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, both of them basking in their shared joy through the crystal tech bond they now permanently shared. "You know," Daniel mused, "when I first accepted that mission from your father, I never imagined it would lead to this." "No?" Ariana turned in his arms, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Not even when you first saw the blind, disabled princess and decided she was worth fighting an empire for?" "Especially then," he grinned, pulling her closer. "Though I did think you were the most fascinating woman I'd ever met. And now I know you're the most extraordinary being in the universe, and our son is proof that love truly can overcome any obstacle." Their passionate embrace was interrupted by Lyrian's delighted gurgle as he created a shower of crystalline butterflies above them. The display drew applause from Lord Theron and other courtiers who had gathered to witness the young prince's daily demonstrations. "He certainly has your flair for the dramatic," Daniel chuckled. "And your talent for making the impossible look easy," Ariana countered, reaching up to caress his face. Through their bond, he felt her overwhelming love and gratitude, not just for their son, but for the journey that had brought them together. King Thalion's voice carried across the chamber. "Ila, let the records show that on this day, we celebrate not just the birth of a prince, but the birth of a new understanding. Through the union of Daniel Stenell and Princess Ariana, we have learned that true strength lies not in perfection, but in how we love despite our differences." As if in response, Lyrian's crystal butterflies transformed into a spectacular display of interconnected light patterns, representing the unified future his very existence promised. The child of a human warrior and a Lemurian princess had become living proof that love could transform limitation into possibility, disability into extraordinary ability, and separation into profound connection. Daniel and Ashiana shared another kiss beneath their son's light show, their bond resonating through the crystal network in perfect harmony with their child's joy. They had discovered that love wasn't about seeing past differences or disabilities. It was about seeing the unique beauty in every form of existence and having the courage to fight for that vision of unconditional acceptance. In the end, their story became legend throughout the galaxy. The tale of how one human's willingness to love without boundaries transformed not just a princess's life, but the future of entire civilizations. And in the crystal gardens of the provincial palace, their love continued to grow, proving that the greatest power in the universe wasn't technology or evolution, but the simple, profound choice to see the extraordinary in each other.